You're not expecting me to play this, right? Because this is, what is this? Why is this so much more difficult than last time? What am I playing here? Are you playing this? I'm assuming this is your stuff, right? This is not for me.
Ready to learn about pentatonics?
About what?
Alright guys, so I was lucky enough to bring back Melissa on for another video here for those of you who didn't already see. In our last video, we did teaching my girlfriend how to improvise in jazz in 15 minutes or something like that. And essentially, you know, I took Melissa, who hadn't played flute in almost like 15 years since high school band, and I showed her how to improvise in jazz. Now, that was a lot of fun, and I think one really nice takeaway from that was even if you haven't played an instrument in a long time, or if you haven't even gotten much into jazz improvisation, you really can start with some pretty advanced stuff. And I think that a lot of people forget that one of the best ways to improve as a musician, and certainly when you're working on improvisation, is to actually really challenge yourself to play some stuff that isn't just the basics. Now, the basics are extremely important, but even within the basics, you can actually get into some pretty cool stuff. So that's what we did last time when we had Melissa jump right into improvising with chord tones and even messing around with mixing up the arpeggio shapes and some cool stuff like that, which, you know, could be called the basics, but is also considered pretty advanced for square one for somebody who maybe hasn't picked up their instrument in 15 years. So the reason why I mention all this stuff is the reality is when I started to learn improvisation, I started with some pretty advanced stuff right off the bat. And that's not because I was just some natural born prodigy who was ready for really advanced material. That's just because I took the approach of saying, well, you know what? The simple stuff kind of bores me a little bit. So let me start with some real like professional type of jazz language and let me just take it one measure at a time. So that's what we're actually going to get into today with Melissa, where I'm going to show her some phrases from an ebook that I just released with jazz lesson videos. That ebook's called 67 Pentatonic Phrases. And this is some pretty hip stuff. This is advanced stuff. Honestly, I wasn't sure how Melissa was going to be able to fare playing what is really, you know, some professional level jazz language written out in this ebook. But as we'll see, not only did I think she actually do pretty well, but she also got a handle through playing these phrases on getting into improvising with pentatonics and doing it pretty fluently. So pretty much the first thing that we did is we just started by my teaching Melissa the major pentatonic scale. And with that major pentatonic scale, I showed her a pretty cool phrase using the full range of that scale.
Do not judge me for it.
Of course not. Of course not.
Nobody
judges people on YouTube.
I know.
Okay, so yeah. So we're going to do a pentatonic scale.
Okay.
And the notes that you're going to play are going to be C, D.
I'm trying to think if I remember them.
E,
Okay.
G, A, and then you can play C again on top.
I feel like Will Ferrell when he's in that movie, Old School.
Articulated innovation policy with emphasis on human resource development. Thank you.
One, two, three, Exactly. Okay, so once Melissa got a hang of the major pentatonic scale and playing that phrase, she started to improvise a little bit just using that major pentatonic scale. Now, I showed her how with the shape of that written out phrase, she could sort of, you know, mimic the pacing of how she added in the notes in her improvisation to sort of match how that phrase structure worked. So with that phrase, the first few notes just used a few pentatonic notes in a sort of smaller range. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And then from there, the phrase expanded to use a wider range using the pentatonic scale. So that's how I sort of eased Melissa into improvising with the major pentatonic scale. Holy crap, like you've been improvising for like 3 minutes and that already sounds
I feel
awesome.
like you just said that in the last video.
When you're learning a written out phrase or a transcribed phrase from a jazz master, essentially you're learning a language in the music. You're learning how to speak a little bit in the music. And so it makes it easier when you start to try to speak on your own. So that's what Melissa did by learning the phrase first and then improvising a bit after. So after we improvised a little bit in C major using the C major pentatonic scale, we then moved to A minor and then used the A minor pentatonic scale. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, nailed it. Ready? 1, 2, 3, Now this phrase got a little harder, but it's really important to know what I did here was I just encouraged Melissa to just learn one measure at a time. We learned one measure at a time forwards to the end, and then we learned one measure at a time backwards from the end back to the beginning. So we're always just focusing on one little bite-sized chunk at a time. As you saw in the beginning, when Melissa saw all of the notes on these pages, she got intimidated pretty quickly. But once she settled into this, she was actually able to get each phrase very fast. Since she had the patience and discipline to focus, she learned each phrase just within a few minutes. So once she had the phrase down with the minor pentatonic scale, we started to improvise a bit using that scale to capture the A minor sound. Then I actually gave her headphones so she could mess around with actually jamming with a backing track. So I gave her the backing track that we have for the minor tonality in this pentatonic phrases ebook, and she jammed along with that. Exactly, that was awesome. Yeah, did you hear? And so just like last time, Melissa only actually spent about 15 to 20 minutes practicing this content. And as you can see, at the end of this little practice session, she's already playing some really cool stuff. Again, this is only the second time that she's gotten her instrument out in almost 15 years. So I think this should be inspiring for everyone, whether you're a developing player who is first getting into improvising, or whether you're a really advanced player that maybe just hasn't been practicing enough recently. This should be a reminder to all of us how much we can improve and how fast we can improve if we really just focus in on one concept for 15 or 20 minutes. Now, for those of you who said, okay, well, this was cool, but I feel like I'm really past just playing the pentatonic scale inside the chord, I'm going to show you just real quick to finish up today. I'm going to show you a concept that I like to call pentatonic shifting, which is where you shift in and out of different pentatonic scales using various techniques to create tension and resolution. So this is a concept that I talk about super in depth in my pentatonics masterclass that we released on jazz lesson videos. And also in this pentatonic phrases ebook, there are a bunch of phrases using this pentatonic shifting concept in minor, dominant, and major tonalities. We also write out all these phrases for you in all 12 keys so you can memorize and internalize all this content as efficiently as possible so it can quickly start to come out in your playing. So in this phrase that we're going to check out, we're using one of the techniques that you can use to do this pentatonic shifting concept. And the technique that we're going to use is going to be shifting tonalities by voice leading to the nearest degree to get into other tonalities. Now, you don't necessarily have to have a theme to how you're changing tonalities because naturally it's going to create tension and release. And when you're using this voice leading concept, it's also going to sound very intentional. It's going to be hip and it's going to be really connected from measure to measure because you're voice leading. However, in this example, you will see a cool harmonic pattern where we move down in major thirds. So this phrase is in C minor and we play inside the C minor pentatonic scale for this first bar. Then you'll see we shift into A flat minor, and then in the third bar, we shift into E minor. So what's happening is we're moving down in major thirds. That ends up being a cycle that brings us back to C minor in the last bar. And if we look at how we shift from measure to measure, the voice leading is going to be very clear. Voice leading is just a smooth transition from chord to chord using a single melodic voice. So what that means is we're just transitioning with the closest possible interval to get into the next key. So the last note of the first measure is a C. That's just the root in the C minor pentatonic scale. But next we're going to A flat minor and we end up getting there by just going up a half step to a D flat. That's because if we're on C minor and we want to go to A flat minor, coming from the note C, we can either go up a half step to a D flat, which will be the fourth of A flat minor, or the third degree of the pentatonic scale, depending on how you want to think about it. Either way works. Or we could also go down a half step to get to B, which is going to be the minor third, or the second degree of the A flat minor pentatonic scale. Either option is great, and then from there we end up playing content in the new tonality. We play all this material though over a C minor vamp, so it ends up creating some really cool tension and release. And as you can see, we do the same exact effect when we go up a half step from the G flat, which is the seventh in the A flat minor tonality, and we go up a half step from that G flat to a G natural, which brings us into the E minor tonality. And we use that same exact technique when we go from the third to the fourth bar, which just brings us back to that home key of C minor. So this phrase ends up having a really cool sound. Let's listen to that now. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you learned something about pentatonics today. Let me know what you want me to cover next in the comments and give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Make sure to also subscribe if you haven't already. We're going to be doing a fun giveaway once the channel gets up to 100,000 subscribers. So if you want to hit that subscribe button, you'll be the first to know what that giveaway is, and you'll also know whenever we're releasing new content on the channel. All right, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.